Hi, my name's Cameron Carlson with AnimeOnLocation.tv. I'm here at Ohayocon 2018 with Miss Samantha
Inoue-Harte.
Yay! We got it slightly right. We're good. So now we're going to kind of just jump into this, and we're going to go right into the question. So what are some mistakes that Westerners have when dealing with Japanese industry and culture when they're introducing themselves? Like we've discussed with some of our fellow Japanese guests, like Shinsei Watanabe or Ayusa Asakawa, but sometimes there's a little bit of cultural things that sometimes people step over, and you've had a lot of dealing with both Japan and America. How would Westerners be able to more approach people from those cultures? Like some tips on that.
One of the things that happened. Oh, sorry, I just totally ganked it.
It's okay.
One of the things that I notice about, it's like when it comes to Westerners working with people in Asia, is that they won't respect or even study anything about Eastern culture, and they'll just go into a meeting in pure American form. It's like they'll just kind of steamroll multiple ideas. They'll make multiple pitches during a meeting. And, it's like when you're pitching an idea to a Japanese anime studio, it's like you kind of have to go with one story idea, pitch that one idea, and as soon as you kind of start to derail and start pitching other ideas, like, oh yes, and then we can do this, and we can have a spin-off show, and we can do this with it. Everybody at the table who's Japanese, you could just see their eyes glaze over as they kind of start to ignore the person giving the pitch. That's the quickest way that Westerners really mess up a meeting with a Japanese anime studio. That and there's a lot of body language in Japanese culture, and so it's like you might see a Japanese person kind of go like, grabbing the back of the head and neck and kind of going, and the Westerner will not take that cue, and they'll just keep talking, and the entire time the Japanese person is like, and that's
it's a polite / not polite way of saying please stop.
Yes, they will not say no.
Correct.
That and another thing that happens is that Americans they like to it's like, oh, here's the contract, sign it now, and no, you have to kind of get to know the Japanese. It's like you have to develop a relationship with them before they even come to a decision of, yes, we'll work with you.
Yeah.
And Americans don't get that. Yeah.
I think that might even apply to some American companies as well.
Yes.
Yeah. So Magical Play is a show that's still in print, and many were shocked at the last episodes that took quite a turn. What were your thoughts on the way the series took towards that end?
When it turned into 3D, I just kind of was like, what is this? I didn't get to appear in the third episode because my character was Pippin, and it was all about Padudu, and it just seemed really odd. We really loved the show a lot. The actresses who played Mustard and Ketchup, they were so great, and it's like you had so many fun times in the studio where you had no idea what was going to come in for the next episode. But it was so short. And the cat outfit was adorable. I think my favorite episode was the cooking episode. And the one female character was feeding her cat costume. And one of the directors, Lowell Bartholomew, played the fish that Padudu wears. That was a really fun show. I had a lot of fun with that one. But yeah, we were all really surprised when it was only 3 episodes.
Yeah.
And then the third episode was just out of nowhere. We had no idea what we were like, what is this? But then it was explained to us that these were actually shorts, like little shorts on the internet.
Okay.
So like kind of like Joe Cartoon or Arsenic. It's like they're all really short shorts, and so that's why we were like, oh, now we get it.
Now it makes sense. Yeah.
So.
Alrighty. And what was the most fun and or serious thing that you ever brought to an anime or show? Like, what would be one of those types of situations? What would be like the most of that?
Well, the fun ones is I really like to mimic animal sounds, and so like the most fun that I ever had was on Final Fantasy Unlimited.
Right. That's where you got to be the chocobo.
Yeah.
And you actually took a pay cut to be the chocobo.
Yes. I love the chocobo so much, and that was like a $3,000 pay cut.
Whoa.
But I was willing to do it because I love Final Fantasy. But yeah, that was the most fun. The most serious thing. Last year, I was asked to write a synopsis for an anime series. Unfortunately, it isn't in production yet, but it was we had to touch on very touchy subject material.
Some dark stuff.
Yeah, I actually had to write a rape sequence.
And sorry about that.
It was pivotal to the story.
Okay.
Because
that must
the
have been
sequence,
pretty hard.
Yeah, it was, and they didn't think that I would be willing to do it, but I did it because essentially this point in this story's timeline, it is the cause of a great war. So it had to be in the story, and it had to be in your face, and it had to be brutal. And so I essentially, it's like when I started writing it, it's like beat by beat, it's like sequentially.
You have to actually write out those sequences of that scene.
Yes, and the details. It's like how many times was this person stabbed, that sort of thing. It's like how was the person stabbed, and they were very impressed. They were like, we were afraid to touch it. You were not afraid to do it, and you did it in such a way that was still shocking, but from the woman's perspective,
which is a big deal.
Yes, and the it's like the shots and everything regarding that scene. It's like what was happening in that sequence. Just like the way it was written was more. It's like it wasn't just like it's like it was shocking in such a way that it was too real. So that was, oddly enough, that was like one of my more proudest moments, because the Japanese were willing to allow me to do it and to push the envelope and to take control of that particular scene.
Well, I'm grateful that you were able to do it and that you were able to get through it and that you did it with such grace and talent that everybody will hopefully, if once it is available, even though it is this plot point, we'll be able to appreciate the story that went into it and how much you worked so hard on it, considering its subject matter. So a lot of shows that you have credits for were over at ADV Films. Since then, they've come back now as Sendai Films. What was that? How's that translation for you to come back to potentially working with some fellow friends down in Houston?
Actually, so I worked over at Monster Island Studios, which was the ADV branch in Austin.
Oh.
And our work throughout the time period of ADV Films was very limited with Houston.
Okay.
We had our own stable of talent. We had our own translators. We had our own sound engineers and directors. And so when ADV Films closed down, we were the first branch to close down. And so then I think our last show was Get Backers.
Yeah.
And it was very poignant because the last episode we recorded it, and I was in that last recording. And afterwards, the director was like, "Okay, well, it's done. and so we were like, well, what do you want to do now? You know, it's like everything's over. You want to go stand outside and smoke a cigarette? And that was actually the first cigarette I ever smoked.
Wow.
Because it was just like, what do you do? We're closed now.
Yeah, you have no more job.
Yeah, Get Backers, the last few episodes, actually, we tried very hard to get in as many of the original Austin voice actors into the sound studio because it was going to be the last opportunity. But when Sentai opened up, we were like, oh, this is awesome. We could probably like get in on that. And we never got any phone calls. So actually all the Austin talent is keeping busy, doing work at BioWare, Rooster Teeth, doing a lot of stuff over at Daybreak Games, you know, on DC Universe Online and King's Isle for Wizard 101 and Pirate 101. So you'll still hear us. We're all around. We're in like all of the Mike Judge movies and the Robert Rodriguez movies.
Yeah, because his studio's there in Austin.
Yes, exactly. So we're still kicking it. We're still keeping
there's
busy.
that other guy who did that thing with the lady in the lake and the water who has a studio there. Oh, that Avatar movie that didn't do too well.
Yeah.
He has a studio.
Yeah, I mean it's like pretty much like we're still doing a lot of like commercials and things like that. It's just that we're just we've moved away from anime.
Okay.
So.
But you're still there.
Yes, we are.
Alrighty. So in Lilo and Stitch 2 that you worked on, is that something, the character story that a person misses or should have been aware of?
Well, when we worked on Lilo and Stitch 2, we were an outsourced studio. It was actually through Powerhouse Animation Studio, and I did cleanup and coloring on it. And really, you know, it's like when you get a scene, you're literally just like given a stack of papers, and you're kind of told it's like, okay, you have to clean up all these, and we were getting them from Asia. Actually, so because we were a second outsourced studio.
So it went from U.S. to Asia back to U.S.
Yes. Yeah, I mean it's normally on a big movie like that, you'll find multiple studios across the globe working on different scenes.
Sections and stuff.
Yeah, so we had no idea what the story was. We had no idea. We just knew it's like, oh, okay, here's Jumba. He's going to be like looking at the camera and talking to the camera. It's like, okay, clean that up. You know, so, but it was, what was nice about it was that it was, we did a combination of hand-drawn animation and then imported it into Flash.
Oh, wow. Of all programs, Flash.
Yeah. I live in Flash.
I mean, there was that good old days of Newgrounds right in the middle of the 2000s where the Flash was king on Newgrounds. I remember that. Now, again, you've worked on so many shows. What should a person look for or to have in their collection that you worked on? Maybe that's a little bit of a hidden gem that you were part of.
Teeth. You have to have teeth. Teeth is a really low budget horror movie.
You said horror movie, right?
Yes.
Is that the one I'm thinking of?
It's the one about It's a cautionary tale about dating.
That movie, yeah.
Where the main female lead has lamprey type teeth in her hoo-ha.
Yep.
And it makes dating very interesting.
Yep.
And so, because, vagina dentata. It was a lot of fun. The movie was such a low budget film. I think I don't even know what credit I got on it. It was the only reason why I got in on the project was because I was a huge fan of Roy Lichtenstein, the pop artist, and the director of the movie was Mitchell Lichtenstein, Roy Lichtenstein's son. Okay. And so I was like, oh my God, I'm 2 degrees of Kevin Bacon to Roy Lichtenstein. Roy Lichtenstein, if you guys see those like absolutely huge blown up images of comic book art, You know, it's like normally it's of the girl crying and things like that from the 80s, and it's just like ginormous paintings of still individual panels from a comic. That was his artwork, and I loved his stuff. So I was like, oh my goodness, I have an opportunity to get all geeky. And then I found out what the story was about, and everybody on set was like, who would watch a movie about a girl with teeth down there?
Apparently a lot.
Yes, and one of the interesting things is that the set for the school is currently where an animal shelter is, but at the time it was an abandoned school, and across the grassy knoll was a women's health center, which provided abortions, and so it was constantly picketed. And then just on the other side of the grassy knoll was a place called Emancipate, which is a place where people will drop off their dogs and cats so that way they can get neutered for stupid cheap. And so it was this cacophony of picketing Christians praying really loudly. And then you've got dogs and cats, you know, yowling at all hours of the day and night. And we're all
chopped.
Yes, and then you've got us trying to pretend that it's like, oh, it's just a regular school day. And so it was just really awkward.
That must have been a really fun set.
Oh yeah, like we had to do so like
professionalism.
Yeah, I mean it's like, and we had to try and time it so that way it wouldn't, the noise wouldn't be so.
Because you guys were low budget, so you didn't have a lot of editing time.
Yeah, and then there was another scene. So I got dragged in to do gore. At first I was dragged in to do some extra work, and then I was like, oh, but then they needed help with the gore effects, and that's actually where I started learning. I had done some stuff on the original Sin City on, just assistant work for the gore effects.
Like cleaning up the blood and everything, making it look pretty and stuff, the coloration. And
and on Sin City, you know, it's like I had to follow around one of the actors. He was that yellow bastard.
I've never seen the show, but I know kind of a little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, and. So on screen he appears yellow, but in real life he was actually blue, so he looked like a giant Smurf. And one of my jobs was to make sure that every time he would touch something, he would leave blue all over the place. And so I had to like go and clean up after him, and you know, it's like chase him down into the bathroom and make sure that everything was okay. So that was awkward and fun. So I got to do start into gore effects that way, but then in Teeth was when I got to do stuff on my own.
Okay.
And so got to make a lot of prosthetics, and so there's this lovely scene in a cave where where it's the aftermath of what had happened, and so you see this thing on the cave floor. And there's a crab. And the funny thing about that crab is that crab really doesn't live in that part of the world. I actually went over to the Asian grocery store, and they had like these live crabs. And I was like, oh, wow, that'd be funny. So I grabbed one of them, and I paid for it. And I just like, for that scene, I was like, here! I threw a crab onto the thing to make it look like it was dragging the thing away. So it was fun. Lots of fun.
Alrighty. So going into ADV stuff, one quick one, and then we'll move along. You worked on pumpkin scissors. What was it like working on that for ADV, being a baby?
Oh, so funny thing about that, it was that that was when Charlie Campbell, who was our director over at Monster Island Studios, actually went over to work over at Houston, the Houston office. And so Charlie was trying to bring in as many of the Austin talent into Houston as much as possible, so that way we can get introduced to all the Houston directors. Unfortunately, most of the Houston directors, they're like, why should we work with you guys? We don't know who you are. So Charlie was the only one that was doing it, and he brought a lot of us in for the Guyver, Gatchaman, and Pumpkin Scissors. But for Pumpkin Scissors, he just was like, hey, can you come in? Like, you do these like really awesome baby cries. Can you just come in to do some baby cries? It's like, okay. So I have a thing where I have a love-hate relationship with babies. Like, babies creep me out.
So no mom anytime soon?
Eventually, I've got fur babies.
Okay, there we go.
I've got fur babies.
But no real human babies.
Yeah, I could be around babies like after a certain age, but like babies just kind of confuse me, and so so I'm a butthead, and so when I go to a restaurant and there's a baby that's crying, like I've learned that it's like if you cry back at the baby, they kind of like don't know how to react. And that typically makes them kind of shut down, and they're just like, what's going on? So I've learned how to mimic baby cries from listening to babies, and I'll just sit there and I'll mimic back at them. Actually, Andre actually heard me mimic like the sound of the escalator the other day. Yeah. So, babies, when they hear that, they're just like, who's doing that? What's going on? Wait, I'm not you. And then they get so befuddled that they stop.
You just confused a child's brain at like 2 months old.
Yes.
Alrighty, 1 second here. Okay. All right. An odd fact about you is that you're also a stunt worker, as we've discussed with Teeth, working on live action. Do you think that actually helps you with your voice acting?
Absolutely not. So when I got into film, I was still in college, and my mom and dad, my mom got cancer when I was in college, and so I ended up having to make every dime that I made, every student loan I had, it would go to pay for my mom's medical bills. Our family ended up having to file for bankruptcy, actually, because of all the medical bills, because my mom was a legal alien. And because she was Japanese, as a Japanese citizen, it's harder to get health insurance.
Right.
So I became Mikey from those cereal commercials from the 80s.
He likes it.
Yeah, get Mikey. He'll try anything. Get Sammy. She'll do anything. And I literally would do anything if it was to get a couple extra dollars. And so, when I would get asked like, "Hey, so we need somebody to jump off of this building and rappel down the side of this building," and I'm like, "I'm scared of heights, but I'll do it," And so I ended up getting a stunt license through Wolf Ranch. Learned how to do safely fall, safely land. Did a lot of stuff with the PWA, which is like wrestling. So I learned how to pretend to fall and look like I'm really hurt. Yeah, and I've always been a really good horseback rider. So a lot of times I'm riding horses. So you can see me riding a horse on Jonah Hex. I'm a fat Mexican man with a handlebar mustache. In True Grit, I do a lot of some of the trick stuff on horseback. I'm small. I'm short. I'm 5'1". Most actors are actually really short, and so I make them look taller. So, I kind of have like a strong jawline, so I can pass as a man if necessary, with just a little bit of makeup and binding these things. That's how I got into stunt work, and it has nothing to do with voice acting at all. I get bumps and bruises, but that's about it.
I mean, everybody's got a different way of making acting what they want, and stunt acting's acting, so it plays all into it. It's all good. So you were also a live-action makeup artist in some pretty big films. What's it like to work with those actors and characters on those films, like Lord of the Rings or somebody like where it really needs a lot of makeup work?
Well, the most makeup has been on Grindhouse. I didn't work on Lord of the Rings.
No, I just meant as an example.
Oh, as an example.
Sorry.
I worked on, the most makeup was on Grindhouse. And
Robert Rodriguez stuff down there, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So on Planet Terror and on Death Proof. It was a lot of fun. And, but working with Tarantino was special and nightmare-inducing because for Death Proof, he really wanted to have the scenes of the deaths caused by the car accidents to be so realistic that it's disturbing to look at.
Yeah.
So at that time period, we had to put together, it's like we had to look at a lot of photos of accidents.
They're not pretty.
Yeah, and lived on ogreish.com for a while, which
Really? Yeah.
Yeah, had to do a lot of research and
including browser history at the end of the day.
Yeah, it is like to this day just looking at that stuff was very disturbing, and so it's like and then showing it to Tarantino and but it's like you're looking at an image and you're trying to emulate that look on somebody, and you're just like looking at pictures of meat and it was special.
All right, it's no problem. We understand. So now, again, this is another fun fact about you is that you just run the gambit of everywhere around the world when it comes to your work, and you work with Blizzard, which I love, on World of Warcraft. So what's it like knowing that you get to work on so many great games with them?
Well, I go through Hamster Ball Studios, which they have an office in Austin, Texas, and they get hired by Blizzard to do some recording. So I don't actually work directly with Blizzard. So essentially, the director Randall will send me an email, and he'll be like, "Hey, it's like we've got this like gnome. We need you to read for this gnome. Can you come on in?" It's like, okay, and so half the time, a lot of times, I don't even actually go into the studio. I'll just record the audio on my phone.
Nice.
And then I'll send over the WAV file, or whatever, it's like whatever type of file that they need, and I record it, and then I'll send it over to them, and then if it gets used, I'll get a check.
Okay.
In the mail. so
Checks in the mail.
So then I'll be like, oh, they used it, awesome. And if they don't, oh, okay.
Alrighty, and just to finish things up here, how can fans? What projects would you like fans to know about at this time that aren't currently available that we didn't discuss?
Check out the movie theaters this upcoming summer. Gotta check out James Cameron and Robert Rodriguez's Alita Battle Angel. I'm in it. What I did was I set up a deal through the company so that way I can bring in all the original voice actors and all the original producers and directors from the original anime to come out and be cameos in the movie. So you'll be able to see Tiffany Grant. You'll be able to see, I think Doug Smith, and I think so I essentially sent out mass emails to all these like voice actors who appeared, and it's like Spike Spencer and it's like all these oldies, it's like, and so they made arrangements on coming in. So throughout the movie, you'll be able to see a lot of us voice actors kind of appear on screen, and and they were so sweet. Like they handled us so well, and everybody, it's like the DVD is hard to find, and it's not on Netflix for the anime. So they were, it's like trying to watch, it's like the movie on set, so that way everybody could kind of get an idea. And so it was really cool having all of us come in, and it's like, and all the staff were like, oh my goodness, you're such and such, and so that was really fun.
Alrighty, and the final question is, where can we keep up with you on the internet? And what is the final message you want to get out to the fans that have been following you throughout this wonderful, illustrious career of yours?
I live on Facebook. I love the Facebook. I'm the only one with my name on Facebook. If there's any others, I quickly get them shut down. Please do come onto there. I love cat jokes and things like that, and Torchwood and Doctor Who related stuff. I'm just a big old geek. I love to interact with the fans there, and I don't know, just be nice with each other, love each other, give lots of hugs, and make the world a better place. So, yeah.
Thank you!
Awesome, thank you for having me.